Written and directed by Jared Block. We're talking 2022's Hunter X. This is actually quite a difficult movie for me to find because of the generic title. Obviously you put in Hunter X and you got Hunter X Hunter all the time. So this was a hard movie for me to track down in actual fact. It's one of the things I've complained out a few times. Don't have such generic titles. Makes for search traffic extremely difficult. Anyway, so this is a kind of low-budget vigilante movie. I was actually a big fan of a previous movie called Boy Wonder, which I'd watched some years ago, which is kind of a similar sort of thing. A low-budget kind of vigilante, not quite a superhero movie exactly, but you know, more of a violent take on that kind of masked vigilante kind of story. So I was quite keen to see Hunter X. Now, Hunter X tells the story of this guy called X, although they do reveal his name later on in the movie, and a seemingly innocuous individual who kind of keeps himself to himself, but he has this alter ego of this kind of masked vigilante who he goes out and effectively kills who he deems has somehow broken the law. We see a couple of examples just at the beginning of the movie. However, not long into the movie, he's actually approached by a seemingly kind of masked sect of people who want him to join their ranks for some reason, and they seem to be like this kind of network of kind of mysterious underground organisation who are trying to improve the world the way they see fit through any means necessary. And to gain entry to this group, he has to survive for 6 days whilst he is being attacked by their kind of group members. So he decides to kind of take the fight to them, so to speak, by figuring out maybe who is behind this group and who knows him, and ultimately kind of trying to look into the people who know this character, know this kind of him personally, and obviously if they've done anything wrong, they'll taste X's blade. What'll happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's talk about it. So this is a very low budget movie, and you know, as such, it's a little bit rough around the edges. I'll say that straight away. So we have to kind of give it some kind of leeway in regards to budgetary restraints. But what can we say works in this movie's favour? I mean, I didn't really know much about this movie's plot prior to watching it. So although I knew it was some type of masked vigilante movie, the storyline with this kind of sect of masked individuals kind of testing him and trying to kind of put him through the ringer was new. And I thought, well, you know what? It's a little different than I was expecting. It has some not typical ideas. So this isn't just the story of this vigilante kind of doing his thing. It has that kind of extra thing into it where he's actually kind of being tested. Now, and what I will say is I feel this movie feels like it should be like a later installment in a kind of series, because you wouldn't expect this movie to have like this kind of plot in the first movie. It feels like you would have to establish it, like X as a character, a little bit prior to having this this kind of plot. But nonetheless, it is what it is. That is the plot. So it makes for a non-typical kind of like low-budget vigilante movie because you have that kind of extra layer on it too. I did like some of the way the movie kind of lets us know the kind of the mindset of this character. He kind of wants to become very much like a kind of invisible person, kind of, you know, not sticking out into society, being just visible enough where people see him but don't really ever kind of pay attention to him and kind of things like that, which I found interesting. I would say as well, the guy they cast isn't typical of what you would consider like to be like an action hero. He very much looks like a quiet kind of strange individual, let me just say. You know, a guy who lives alone with his cat, which is exactly what he is in this movie. A little bit of an off-kilter, you might say. The movie has quite a lot of violence in it, some of which I think so there's some practical kind of gore effects, which I think there's an okay kind of job with. And like I said, there's a reasonable amount of kind of kill sequences and kind of fight scenes, and quite a lot of implied violence. I think the movie doesn't have the budget to do, you know, a lot of kind of like gore shots and VFX in regards to that. But there's certainly a lot of kind of implied violence and things. I think the character has an interesting kind of look. So let's talk about what doesn't work. And some of this stuff is going to be budgetary. So let's talk about the technical elements first of all. One of the biggest things that struck me is the poor audio quality of this film. It sounds like they've used just the audio that was picked up in the kind of like the mic as they've been kind of filming, and as such the kind of the dialogue often kind of sounds tinny and like it's not been kind of picked up properly. I understand, you know, you might not have like ADR re-recording in kind of low budget movies and things like that. And I have seen movies where like the kind of like the dialogue picked up by the kind of the microphones is okay, but here it sometimes feels quite poor. Maybe the microphone, the boom mic wasn't kind of in position properly or something. It feels a little tinny. At times as well, I think the editing is extraordinarily choppy. There's some very kind of like rough transitions and kind of like jarring edits within the film. There's also an attempt here, I think, to try and make you feel like the guy is kind of cracking up by having these kind of like overlays, these kind of like digital like kind of messing up the picture and things like you would see in a kind of like a found footage movie to a certain degree. And this not being a found footage movie, I found that a little bit of an odd choice to have this kind of disruption in front of the camera, like the kind of like it's kind of got some type of video interference or something. It's like that's meant to represent this guy's fractured psyche, I suppose. But I don't know. It was an odd choice and kind of didn't really, I feel, work, if I'm honest. So that's kind of some of the technical elements here that I felt were on the poorer side. Let's talk about what I think doesn't work in regards to story. So as I've said, I think that the idea to have this kind of sect come after the character of X was an interesting one and does give it some originality and not a typical kind of just a revenge or a kind of vigilante killing spree. But like I've said, I think this is a sort of a story that you would expect to see later on down the line, because you really don't feel like the character of this vigilante is particularly kind of well realised before we kind of get into that. I think a much better idea would have been to establish this character in a lot stronger movie and have his kind of like motivations more explained and stuff, because what we do get is very, very truncated, and we really don't see, we get a little bit of a kind of flashbacks about his origin, and you know, we get a couple of kind of vigilante kills at the beginning of the movie, but you feel like it was just kind of rushed through to try and get to this kind of like this killer versus killer kind of style storyline. And it's just like, yeah, this would have worked better, I feel, it had this kind of character a bit more established, but he isn't, so you feel like it doesn't really work in that aspect. I think the movie doesn't really give you any type of world building, like who is this kind of organisation, how does it work, who's involved, how big is it, don't know anything. It's just a bunch of people in kind of masks. How are they found out? Don't know. It just doesn't tell you anything, to be honest. And it's kind of like, I think the idea, I can see where they were going with the idea, but I think the execution on a story-wise level is kind of a little poor, if I'm honest, how that's kind of incorporated. I think the acting, you know, is somewhat typical of a kind of a lower budget movie. I don't think it's necessarily bad, but no one's going to say the acting was fantastic here. But there are some kind of instances where I think the dialogue is a little bit kind of hokey and cheesy and doesn't really feel natural. Again, you're not going to, I don't think people are going to pick too many holes in that, because I probably don't think you'd expect that from a film like this, but it is just kind of worth saying. And I think the other thing as well, I think the choreography and the action sequences is, for the most part, pretty poor. These fight sequences do not look like they're particularly kind of well kind of like practiced or anything like that. They feel awkward. You can see people kind of try and clearly not to actually hurt each other and stuff. So they really don't feel particularly kind of brutal or violent. It feels very kind of like a couple of people wrestling and things like that. It just doesn't look particularly kind of like it's a genuine kind of fight in any ways. And again, I appreciate this is a low budget movie. We're maybe not going to have proper kind of fight choreography, but it doesn't look like much has been done with it at all, to be honest. So I have seen a movie, like I mentioned Boy Wonder, which was a Vigilante movie, which was very low budget, and that to me was a lot more hard-hitting than this one, a lot more better produced. So I know this can be done, but this one I feel is on the weaker side. There are a couple of ideas that I kind of liked, but overall I've got to say it was a little bit of a weak film, to be honest with you. Even if you can take the budget into effect, there's things here that I feel could have been improved upon, even with the budget as it is. So for me, this is a 3 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.